The first sign that something was off that morning was the sound. Like something alive and irritated, I remember crouching behind the server rack, a flashlight clenched between my teeth, thinking that the CEO's espresso machine had no business sounding like a possessed radiator. I muttered to myself, wondering why that cursed thing was once again interfering with the building's power flow. It had been wired into the same breaker as the East Wing EVICTION system, a disaster I had personally uncovered years ago during a blackout caused by someone brewing too many lattes at once. Nobody had documented that incident except me, and that was the pattern. Nobody ever documented anything, but I remembered everything. That morning had started like every other morning for the past 21 years. My name is Miranda Jean Harkins, and I had been unlocking that office door at exactly 6:47 a.m. for decades. Always early, always prepared, always carrying the same brass key. They handed me back in 2002. I took care of that key like it mattered, oiling it twice a year because I had learned that executives panic when something as simple as a lock squeaks. They assume it is broken instead of considering that maybe it just needs maintenance, much like everything else in their world. When I stepped inside, I was greeted by the usual mess: gum stuck in the sink, leftover sushi rotting in the fridge, and a kombucha bottle that had exploded over the weekend. None of that was technically my responsibility, but I handled it anyway, scraping dried seaweed off stainless steel like it was just another Tuesday. Over the years, I became something invisible but essential, like duct tape, holding together a machine that everyone depended on but no one understood. My official title had changed to Facilities and Operations Manager, but to most people I was still just the receptionist. Meanwhile, my inbox overflowed with thousands of urgent emails from employees who could not figure out how to replace toner, cartridges, or reset basic equipment. It only got worse when the company hired a new HR director named Haley, fresh out of school and full of confidence that had no foundation. She once asked me where the Ethernet plug went, and I told her plainly that it went into the wall, the same place her performance would eventually land. She did not appreciate the humor. I never had a fancy degree or wore expensive clothes, but I knew that building better than anyone. I knew how it breathed, how it reacted to weather, which pipes groaned before a storm, and which systems would fail when humidity climbed to high. I had kept that place running through floods, outages, and leadership disasters. I had worked under 3 different CEOs, each one more disconnected than the last, and not once did anyone truly acknowledge what I contributed. At best, I received half-hearted compliments, sometimes paired with something as meaningless as a leftover snack. At some point, I stopped correcting people when they got my name wrong. It did not feel worth the effort anymore. What they also forgot, or maybe never fully understood, was how deeply I was tied to the company's foundation. Back when the business was just an idea struggling to survive, I had stepped in where no one else could. They needed a lease for office space, but none of them had the credit or stability to secure it. So I signed it myself, not as a co-signer, but as the primary tenant. At the time, it felt like helping family. Over the years, I handled every renewal, every negotiation, every interaction with property management. My name remained on the paperwork because no one ever bothered to change it. They simply assumed things would keep working the way they always had. For a long time, I accepted being overlooked. I showed up, did my job, and kept everything running smoothly. But then came the email. It was one of those carefully worded messages from HR announcing restructuring, which everyone knows is just a polite way of saying layoffs are coming. I felt it immediately. I had seen this play out too many times before. When the meeting invite arrived, late in the day with no explanation, I knew exactly what it meant. The next morning, I walked into that meeting wearing the same cardigan I had owned for years, the one that had survived countless long nights and stressful days. Haley was already there, smiling in a way that felt rehearsed. A lawyer sat beside her, holding a folder like it contained something important. Though I already knew what was inside, they spoke in calm, controlled voices, explaining that the company was moving in a new direction. I let them finish before asking the only question that mattered: whether that direction included me. The silence that followed told me everything. They slid the severance package across the table. It was generic, impersonal, and full of errors, including my own name. After 21 years, they still could not get it right. They asked for my keys and badge, and I handed them over without hesitation. But before I left, I asked them one simple question. I wanted to know if they were sure, not out of desperation, but because I understood something they clearly did not. I walked out of that building without looking back. I did not cry. Instead, I drove to a quiet parking lot and made a phone call to someone I trusted. Lenny had grown up around me, and now he was a real estate lawyer. When I mentioned the lease from 2002, he immediately understood the significance. There was a pause on the line, followed by a low whistle. He asked if the company knew about it, and I told him they did not. That was the moment everything shifted. When I got home, I pulled out a file I had kept for years, labeled clearly in case I ever needed it. Inside were all the documents connected to the lease, including the original agreement and every amendment. As I read through it carefully, I found the detail that changed everything. The lease required written notice for renewal at least 30 days before expiration. The deadline had passed 2 days earlier. They had not renewed. They had not even tried. I realized then that legally, I was still the tenant. The company occupying that space was no longer protected by a valid lease. They had unknowingly placed themselves in a position where they could be removed entirely. I considered warning them, sending a simple email to point out their mistake. But I quickly dismissed the idea. They had made their decision about me without hesitation. Now I would make mine. Over the next few days, I worked quietly. I confirmed the lease status with the property manager, filed the necessary paperwork, and secured a new tenant who was willing to pay significantly more for the space. Everything was done properly, legally, and without unnecessary drama. The eviction notice was issued, and the timeline was set in motion. When the company finally realized what was happening, it was already too late. The panic spread quickly, starting with confusion at the front desk and escalating into chaos at the executive level. Meetings were called, phones rang endlessly, and accusations flew in every direction. Eventually, someone discovered the truth, that I was the one behind it, and that I had the legal authority to do exactly what I had done. The CEO called me that evening, furious and desperate. He demanded answers, questioning how I could take such drastic action. I listened calmly before explaining that I had not taken anything from them. I had simply stopped holding everything together. They had underestimated my role, ignored my contributions, and ultimately removed me without understanding the consequences. In the days that followed, the company scrambled to relocate, packing up their offices under pressure while the new tenant prepared to move in. The building that had once been my responsibility was no longer mine. But I felt no regret. Instead, I felt something I had not experienced in a long time, a sense of closure. On the morning the eviction was enforced, I sat at home with a cup of coffee, listening to the quiet around me. There was no urgency, no stress, no endless list of problems waiting to be solved. For the first time in decades, I was not responsible for keeping everything running. Later that day, I received a delivery from the new tenant. It was a simple gesture, a small basket with a note thanking me for the opportunity. It was not extravagant, but it was genuine. And somehow, that meant more than all the years of being overlooked. I walked over to a small hook on my wall and hung the original office key there. It no longer opened anything, but it represented something important. It was a reminder of everything I had built, everything I had endured, and the moment I finally chose to stop being invisible. In the end, I did not destroy anything. I simply stepped back and let the consequences unfold. And that, more than anything, was what made it powerful.